there's just no denying I'm just going to say the words that come to mind, and I apologize if they offend anybody, but like just the utter failure that came that we've experienced in the last 2 years, and it's seeped into other aspects of the Cowichan Valley, and I'm fairly certain that it has to do with the OCP, the MOCP, and the CZB, and how that's reflective on the rest of the organization. And when I do something wrong, which is quite often, but if I'm thoughtful about changing course, I acknowledge it first. What did we do? Say it out loud, own it, apologize to the people. Ask, how could we make it right? And then recommit to moving in that direction. That was partly what I was attempting to do. I get to vote on policy. I make $50,000, and I come here once a week and I'm asked to give my opinion. So if I'm not speaking truthfully here at this table based on the private conversations I have in my community are just they're heart-wrenching. And there's people are just giving up. Lots of people, not everybody, lots are. I saw Mr. Barron's, when I asked him that question, I heard it in his voice for a second. He got choked up because they've been at it for 2 years. So, saying anything close to status quo is just, I can't get there. I can't get there, and I apologize for that. So I like where it's going. I think I've kind of got there. We've got to find a way to take accountability as an organization, to let the public know we've internalized it, we've reflected, and we've changed course, and we've taken ownership for what's happened. And I'm not talking just the board, I'm talking us as an organization. And and land use is so much of it, because that's often how people interact with the CVRD. They come here, the first thing they see is a plexiglass, and lots of times we hear about great interactions, but just as of late, there's just deep concern. And I don't think it's misinformation. I don't think it's that governments, we are responsible for this organization and our community, and be the change, be what we want to be. That's what I think. And if we're not setting our aspirations significantly higher, we're just gonna follow the same mistakes. So thank you, Chair. First, I just want to acknowledge Ms. Charles for standing up and answering these questions. There's a heaviness to them, I think rightfully so. It's just as challenging to ask these questions as I'm sure it is to answer them. So I just want to first acknowledge you for that. And I think this is part of a first step about, pointing to what some of the challenges are at the CVRD, and more specifically within land use. So I have two questions. Do we have a culture problem?
Through you, Chair, I don't believe we have a culture problem. I come to work and, work with people that appear to look happy to be there and work really well as a team. In advance of this presentation, had lots of discussions with managers, with Mr. Brisky. So we're coordinated and united in our approach and supporting the board and the board's priorities. And we want to deliver excellent public service. That's why we're here. And if it's not working, we're very committed to making it better. In some ways, we've not acknowledged perhaps our rural areas enough. And this region has been going through tremendous economic change from forestry to something else, possibly tourism, maybe something else. But I think we need to do also do some analysis around our rural areas and looking at how those areas should grow and change. And I think there was a reference to holding zones or something to that effect. But in terms of looking forward at how the OCP could be replaced or improved, that would be, I think, one of my principal goals.
Yeah, the second question. Without question, our communities are changing, and, you know, I'm almost at the age now where my kids are going to be moving out of the house, which is weird. I feel like I just moved out. And you don't need an analysis to know there's not many places for them to go. They're going to have to leave our community, many of them. So if, hypothetically, we were going to hit our housing targets and try to 10x our applications, what would be the first couple things you'd do to achieve that goal?
So, through you, Chair, I mean,
if you had a magic wand as well, you can direct the board, and we could create the policy. What are the
housing targets? I would. We can do more work, as noted, to streamline our bylaws, our development guidelines, add more exemptions, but we can also do a lot more work with our external agencies, because when we work in a regional district, obviously there are authorities we do not have, and we rely on the province for water licenses, for subdivision approval, for road approvals, right? And so we need to be working closely with Ministry of Transportation and Transit and water licensing around development approvals. It's critical.
Sort of item, but I won't take it up a level, as it were. You know, the last couple of years, we've been hearing about plans and strategies, frameworks, and meanwhile, residents are telling us things aren't working. Can you explain why there's such a big gap between the picture painted in this report and the experience that many applicants, even as of this week, continue to have? What's the gap? Does that question make sense?
Well, through the chair, I mean, I think that, you know, if we were to roll back the clock, we would talk about the process to adopt the OCP, the public hearing, and the resulting vote on the bylaw, which was 6-3, which is not, in my view, a stable foundation on which to implement the OCP or to, you know, proceed with regulatory bylaws to implement the OCP. So there was a bit of a shaky, let's say a shaky foundation, and clearly, while there was a really long, lengthy, robust process that went into developing the official community plan, there were still people in our community that did not feel that they were adequately heard, and don't see themselves reflected in that plan. And so we need to reconcile that. We need to understand what it is that isn't happening, how that plan could be either amended or replaced with something that does reflect what represents our community broadly. Everybody should be able to look at it and not necessarily agree with every single statement that's in the plan, but they should be able to see themselves in the plan, right? And so that will be the goal. But it is going to be a challenge, because we have to nail down what are the things that are specifically, causing the friction. I would say that the work on the zoning would probably be easier. There were a lot of things that came up from the public when they saw the first draft of the zoning that, in my view, are not actually difficult fixes. And So we will, we'll talk about that in September when that report comes forward, and how the board wants to proceed, and whether you want to take action then or you want to leave it for the next board. But there are a number of different paths that can be taken. How do we reconcile right now, dissatisfaction with what I'm presenting you? I mean, I don't really know how to respond to that question. I think it's very individual. Everyone comes to this with a different, perception of us.
I would say that's a good answer. I agree with your assessment.